Sometimes you're a part of something that seems so inevitable, that has so much inertia that you know there's nothing standing in its path that could possibly prevent it from reaching its destination. But at the same time, it's grinding forward so slowly that only the people on board really understand what's happening. That's what it's been like to be in crypto for the last 10 years, and especially this week. If all you really want to grind into is an ADA price that starts with something that's higher than 0.3, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right. Thank you for joining, everybody. This is one of the few episodes where the biggest news that's being discussed might be something that one of you has reported in the comments. So let's take a look at the comments right now. First is NeoChad. NeoChad, good job being first. What is that? Is that a little? Is that, I can't tell. Is that emoji? Is that a little worker? Is it a little worker? I can't tell. Joe Davidson is here. Let's go. Streetwise is here. Streetwise says, I'm long on blockchain, but sheesh, too many more days like today, and I might go long rope. Yeah, man, still to this day, when I hear the phrase, I'm long on blockchain, I cannot help but think of a very specific interview where somebody said, I'm long on blockchain, but short on crypto. It's unbelievable. And there was a period, this was early in the last cycle, people would say, I'm long blockchain, but short BTC or short Bitcoin or short crypto. But it was short-sighted. Fly Over Me says, looks like it passed though. My question is, what's in it? 709, already late. Let's go. Tuned in. Let's go. Emilio, let's go. Omar and Emilio are here. Do Not Use says, hello again from the depths of the fiat mines. Hope everyone dug out something. I hope few of you are in the fiat mines right now. I know a few of you are, and I feel for you because I'll be there with you sometime soon. I don't know when, but sometime soon. Hilldog, let's go. Thanks for joining. Let's go. Fly Over Me says, looks like it needs to clear the Senate Banking Committee and to secure broader bipartisan support before a floor vote can occur. We are definitely going to talk about it. This is the Clarity Act. Charles just posted that they signed. Here's some big news. Charles just posted that they signed USDC to come to ADA. So this is breaking news. I haven't heard any of this yet. I'm hearing it from you guys, which is great. Thank you for this. So Fly Over Me has some additional details. Fly Over Me says USDCX is a wrapped representation of USDC on the Aleo network. Just now from Charles, hello from Japan, just signed the integration agreement for USDCX on Cardano. Welcome to Cardano Circle. We are all excited about the possibilities. More from the Pentad soon. So there's definitely some issues that need to be explored here. My feelings are a lot like Raz's here. Raz says, so not the real USDC then, huh? Yeah, I mean, where USDC is already a stable coin, I'm kind of like, do we really just get a wrapped version of USDC? Like, what's going on here? You know, maybe, who knows? At the end of the day, all we care about is function, probably. Function is definitely the more important piece of it. I think Cardano is definitely a substance over form kind of ecosystem, but still, just a wrapped stablecoin. 8 Clip says Cardano Parkway has the smoothest roads. It sure is. Those roads sure are going to be the smoothest by the time we get done with them. Otis Frigiov says, let's go. Ready for this Cardano rumor rundown. All right. First time live from UK, brother. Nice to be here. Mahesh Ranavaya, thank you for joining. I appreciate you being here. Curly Knox is here. Ayo. Omar Wright is greeting you. The Joeyers says, first live, keep up the amazing work. AOS feels like your channel is the biggest hidden gem on crypto YouTube. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Chad says, did we get Temu USDC? I feel bad for Mahesh. Mahesh is joining us for the first time, and we're all talking shit about the USDC. But you know, we think about things from all angles here. Chad might. I hope Chad doesn't have it right. I hope that's not right. But I have the same question, Chad. Rojo Ohm says already we have wrapped USDC with one chain. Yeah, I mean that's kind of my problem. Google says, well, USDC is the standard. USDC X is a separate private programmable version launched by Aleo in 2026 using Circle's technology. Yeah, man, it's just not quite the same with that X on there, is it? The second I saw that X, I was like, man, that X feels like a giant asterisk to me. Feels like a giant asterisk. Liam, thanks. Thanks for being here. Checking in. Mahesh is laughing. Yeah. First live stream, and we're talking about Temu USDC. I hope, Charles, if you're listening, we're not making fun of your USDC. We're very glad to have it. We're just exploring all the possibilities here. So I'm sure this is going to be discussed ad nauseum for the next couple of weeks. We'll go into a lot of detail about USDC and whether it's real USDC or whether it's Temu USDC. Chad is laughing. Ada Fox says, hey, boss, thanks for joining. So thank you, everybody, for being here. So before we got into the Temu USDC subject, okay, Society accent says, wait, what did I miss? What is the USDC X? So scroll up in the comments and you'll see people explaining it. It's a wrapped USDC created by Aleo Network, I think. If your question is, what the hell is the Aleo Network? I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Otis Free Joe says, wrapped or no wrapped? You know what she wants. That's the saddest part about us having these assets in crypto we call wrapped is everybody knows deep down how they feel about wrapped. Everybody already knows how everybody feels about that. It's true. We can't deny it. No matter what gender you are, you can't deny it. Nobody wants that. So I'm open to it, though. I'm intellectually open. If somebody can convince me that the substance of this thing is the same, that the X or no X, wrapped or no wrapped, is just a form issue, and there's no substantive difference, I'm intellectually open to it. But whenever I see that X like that, I see it as a big old asterisk. So we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. But first, let's talk about everything that happened today. Our astronaut riding on the steamroller here. This is not about Temu USDC. This is not about wrapped for her pleasure USDC. This is about grinding forward. I've felt like crypto has been riding on this steamroller, right? And people might drive past us and say, oh, that sucks. They're riding on a steamroller, right? Steamrollers are slow, but nothing can stop a steamroller, right? There is no little rock in the road. There is no stone or pebble that's going to stop the steamroller. The steamroller is too big, too much inertia, too much mass, too much momentum. Even if it's going slow, okay, maybe not that much momentum, but it's moving forward, and very few things can stop it from moving forward. It's going to crush and flatten anything in its way, but it moves pretty slow. So even though in crypto, really since the early days of crypto, those of us who believed in crypto knew where it was going to go. We knew it was going to get to this point where TradFi was going to try to bastardize us and corrupt us and turn us into something we don't want to be. We knew we'd get to that point because the value proposition of blockchains and crypto, as much as TradFi and the mainstream media would like to divide those two things, people brought it up before. A lot of mainstream media pundits last cycle were saying, I'm long blockchain, but short crypto. This cycle, at least they've figured out that there aren't really good blockchain non-crypto solutions that work as well as true crypto things, right? Because what they really meant by that was, hey, I think all the banks are just going to adopt decentralized ledger technology. Another one of their euphemisms they love to use, DLTs, they're going to adopt DLTs, but they're just going to centralize it, right? Like JP Morgan is going to run all 72 nodes, basically. That's how the blockchain is going to work, right? And then they figured out that the value is all lost. When you do that, the value is lost. That's just a ledger, right? Like that's a spreadsheet. Banks can already do that. They already have, very archaic spreadsheet type ledgers, dressed up as something fancy. They already do all that stuff. Like the centralized ledger technology that people were talking about a cycle ago doesn't really present any additional value, but blockchains do. The way we do them in crypto, they do. So we've always known we were going to get here, but it's been a grind. We've been on this steamroller that can't be stopped. It's inevitable. We always knew crypto was inevitable. It wasn't going to be stopped. It was inevitable we'd get here, but it's been a very slow slog, decades long now. What are we into this? 17 years. We're into this 17 years, right? I've been in crypto for over a decade, since that 2012, 2013, 2014 period. And I think all of us thought we'd get here a lot faster. We knew we'd get here, but it's been slow. It's been a slow grind riding on the steamroller. Today was no exception to that. We made some progress. We're like always making progress, but it's slow progress. And we got to see it up close and personal. So we'll jump in and look at exactly how that looked. Ruandre says, hello, AOS. How are you? Send this market already. Haha, just got in. We go up in your opinion after Trump announces new Fed chair. Thanks for the live stream. Man, I never comment on price because it's too complicated, too hard to predict, and everybody's always wrong. It's like I like to say the opinion of all commentators on crypto is basically worth nothing, right? If the opinion of all the commentators was worth anything, then there would have been a lot of people, not getting 2025 wrong. And yet virtually 100% of people talking about crypto got it wrong last year. So we were all wrong last year, which just kind of, proved my thesis that nobody knows what the markets are going to do. So I never comment on price, the new Fed chair issue, we talked about that quite a bit last night. Is it Oh, sorry. I touched the mic again. So sorry. So, what I was saying though is in answer to that question, and I think you guys got the audio back. Temu audio. Yep. That was Temu audio for a second. I think the audio is probably back right now. But in answer to the question, what I was saying while the mic was out was nobody really knows what the markets are going to do. But, is the whole point of Trump's new Fed chair going to be to do everything possible to juice the economy? Answer, yes, that's going to be Trump's aim. Is he only one vote out of 12 on the FOMC? Also, yes. Can he influence consensus on the FOMC? Also, yes. Is liquidity is greater? Does crypto what does it look like when crypto's doing well? Crypto's usually doing well in a high liquidity environment. So anything the new Fed chair can do to increase liquidity, which is going to be Trump's whole goal, is probably going to be good for crypto prices. Is it really bad from an Austrian economics perspective that we're going to debase the currency? Yeah, it's not a good Austrian economics thing, but crypto was sort of invented, based on the Genesis block and what Satoshi wrote in it. Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. crypto was created to deal with that Austrian economics nightmare. So, I think that's what it looks like. Huji says this could be interesting. Aleo is the first ZK blockchain designed with programmable privacy as a core principle. Knowledge proofs. This would make it a good stable coin to work with Midnight. That sounds good. I wish we could have real USDC still though. But if we could only have a wrapped one, sounds like a ZK blockchain, probably makes sense with Midnight. Dolphy Wolf is here. Says good morning, grinders. Good morning, Dolphy Wolf. Streetwise says watch the Midnight Osaka live stream. Boy, it didn't look very organized or coherent. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen the Osaka one yet. I'd like to see it. Hey, AOS, did you sign up for the Midnight Validator Digest newsletter? I'm all up in the Discord, and I get a bunch of emails, so I'll have to go through and see exactly which newsletter that is. But if I'm not, I will definitely sign up for it. Let's see. Hey, Rulo. I don't know why your previous comment didn't show up. If it had a link in it, the anti-spam stuff is set to automatically get rid of links. That's the only way to stop the unstoppable spammers. Okay, let's see. No B. Yeah, we've had no B's in here. I did end up not assassinating that previous B. I extracted him like Delta extracted Maduro. It was very efficient. It was a very efficient process. Okay, let's see. Charles, yep, we talked about it, Danil. That was an interesting news. The USDCX thing was very interesting. I'll be curious. I want to get more details on that before people were joking that we got Temu USDC, which is kind of funny, but I'd like to get more. I'd like to get more details. And Bill says, get all up in it. Rookie mistake. Okay, let's jump in and talk about some of the things that have happened. And there's actually a lot to talk about today, so we're going to try to cruise through it, and we'll see if we can get through all the topics because a lot's going on. Of course, with things happening in Japan, we're going to get some things that happen right before the live stream, like every night. So that's what's going on. Joe David says, I'm confused. What does the X mean in USDCX? That it's wrapped. It means that it's wrapped. Yep, it's like USDC asterisk. It's wrapped. Unfortunately. Okay. So we'll try if there's some time left over at the end. We'll see if we can get some more information on maybe I'll save it till the next stream, but we'll see what we can do. Okay. So the big news this morning for all of crypto, not just for USDC on Cardano, is is the Senate Agriculture Committee advancing the crypto market structure bill. So advancing here is the key word. What exactly do they mean by that? So 80 Eclipse is right. You never know. I might touch the mute button. USDCX is a wrapped representation of USDC on the Aleo network. We discussed it earlier in the comments and on the audio. So you can, if you're late, this is what's going on. You can Google how does USDC differ from USDCX by Aleo for brief. Oh, good call. Good call, Huji Wemmer. Good call. So what happened this morning though was basically the Senate version of the Clarity Act, which we generically call the Market Structure Bill, did advance out of the Senate Agriculture Committee. But when they say it advanced, it wasn't because there was any agreement between the left and the right. Yeah, I mean, apparently Ruandre, it's USDCX, not really USDC, but who knows? Maybe there'll be a second announcement. I don't know. So here's how it actually went. So people got real excited, and some people even thought that meant, we were done with the bill in the legislature, which is not the case. This was one committee in the Senate. It's sort of one half of the important committees dealing with this. The first important committee was the Senate Banking Committee. So the Banking Committee is sort of over the SEC side of the House, and the Ag Committee, the Agriculture Committee, is over the commodities side of the House. So that corresponds to the agencies that regulate those things being the SEC and the CFTC. So this was sort of the commodities and CFTC side of the house. And even on this side, it only passed along party lines, right? Like the Democrats did not vote for this. This says just in, the Senate Ag Committee has just passed its portion of the Clarity Act out of committee on a 12-11 party line vote with no Democrats voting in favor. And the reason why there were no Democrats voting in favor is because they wanted certain amendments. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of the amendments kind of made sense and some were super dumb. They were super dumb. So yeah, and this is true in a lot of different ways. This applies to a lot of different things in crypto right now. The beatings will continue until morale improves. That is certainly true of today. So Adam Rush gives you a really good example, and I agree with him as always. So Adam says, I thought it was pretty hilarious when Durbin, he's talking about Senator Durbin, proposed his amendment to prevent crypto institutions from being bailed out by the government. My brother in Christ, we want that and so much more. I 1,000,000% agree with this. Basically, Durbin went on and on about how he's a crypto skeptic. He literally says, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And then he goes on and on about FTX as if we're all like cheerleaders for FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried is our, freedom fighter hero who we all think is wrongly imprisoned or something. When in fact, we all hate Sam Bankman-Fried. He nuked all of our bags, right? So Durbin, he goes through his whole thing talking about how much he hates crypto just to say, don't make taxpayers bail out the next FTX. As if that's something we would ever want, right? So Boozman, who is in charge of the committee, comes back and says nothing in the bill allows for crypto bailouts, which is true. And of course, in crypto, I think a lot of us would be in favor if they never bailed out anything ever again. Like, don't ever bail out another bank. Don't ever bail out another financial institute. Don't ever bail out another Wall Street TradFi entity. Just don't bail out anything. We're totally cool with that. Like, we're not going to fight you on that. It's not us. It's not crypto who wants to bail anything out. That's sort of the antithesis of what crypto believes in. We're kind of like the whole, originally we were like the code is law crowd. But definitely we're like, if you go broke, we're fine if you don't bail. If somebody goes broke, we're fine if you don't bail them out. In fact, we'd love it if you don't bail them out. So these are the kind of amendments we were dealing with, and if you want to see what this guy looks like. So here's the fellow who's talking about this, right? His other big amendment, he's worried that Bitcoin ATMs are the getaway car for fraudsters. Fraudsters are using the Bitcoin ATMs, as the getaway cars for their massive frauds on, working class Americans, which if you're in crypto, sure, ATMs of all types can be part of crimes. Are Bitcoin ATMs, some evil element in the crypto scene that we all know, is the big tool being used by the big fraudsters? Not at all. Not at all. The bad guys in crypto just take your crypto directly out of your wallet. That, it's like the ATMs aren't making the robbery forest the robbery forest, but Durbin worried about the robbery forest. So there were some other amendments that were proposed, like, hey, how about if nobody in Congress gets to hold crypto? They talked about Carter, who was it? Carter. I think they talked about Carter putting his peanut farm into a blind trust when he went to the White House. These kinds of things. Again, I think all of us in crypto are pretty okay with members of Congress not being able to trade. We'd all be pretty okay if the Trump family hadn't ever launched a Trump coin or a Melania coin. Like, we'd all be okay with that. We're not going to fight you on this stuff. So I think we're all pretty good on the kinds of amendments that they were fighting back with. But it was sort of like, it wasn't like, it was more like the tone of the amendments was more like, we know you crypto people, this is going to be like a fatal blow to your agenda of fleecing the working class Americans. We're kind of over here like, we are the working class Americans. We are the ones who are trying not to get fleeced. We are not the ones doing these things you're afraid of, nor would we really fight you on doing any of these things. I mean, obviously, though, I think they also know the people proposing these amendments. They also know that probably all of the people in Congress who are pro crypto are holding crypto. So it's kind of a problem for those people if they can't hold crypto, right? If they can't, buy more Bitcoin. If it's like you're in Congress, you can no longer DCA into crypto. Maybe you could set up a blind trust, with some kind of a directive to continue DCAing into crypto. But then if you're not allowed to participate, it's like you couldn't tell it to stop. You couldn't tell the blind trust to stop DCAing, and it wouldn't really be a blind trust. You see where I'm going with this. So anyways, the amendments were all shot down. So the people on the right had enough votes to push this out of committee without any of the amendments. So in response, everybody on the left voted no. So this bill left the Ag Committee with all Democrats voting no. And exactly, if they can trade stocks, why not have crypto? Like, I'd be totally okay if all members of Congress had to put all of their assets in a blind trust and they couldn't trade shit. I would actually be okay with that. But just saying, hey, nobody in Congress can trade crypto so that no congressperson really has a vested interest in crypto. I mean, that's just like an anti-crypto thing. It's not really a, let's stop the corruption kind of thing. And Bill says Dick Durbin, emphasis on the dick. Yeah, and I mean, like, just looking at this guy, like, does anybody really believe that he understands crypto or that he's worried about these villains in crypto? When I look at a senator like this, what I think is that, probably some bankers, probably it's more like some bankers were like, hey, Dick, we want you to oppose the crypto legislation. And here are some talking points, right? And some kind of a bunch of lobbyists came up with those talking points. I don't really believe a guy like him is worried about any of the things he's talking about. So, okay, let's see. What do we got here? Let's see. Okay. Streetwise says okay, we got that one. And Bill says that about the left. Afro in the wind. Thanks for joining. Made it another day through the fiat mines. 2xing my way to live. Let's go. Let's go. So fly over me with more information on Temu USDC. USDC Temu leverages Aleo's zero knowledge cryptography by default, making transaction details, sender, receiver, amount, balances, and other activity encrypted and confidential to the public. Okay, so it sounds like, maybe it was chosen. Maybe this wrapped USDC. Like I said, I'm open to it if it was chosen for actual functional reasons. So, maybe there's enough value in what Aleo adds to it that it's actually better for us than regular USDC. Maybe we wanted the Temu USDC. I'm open to it if somebody can convince me. I'm open to it. Mission Zambia, good morning. Thanks for joining. Maybe he should look into the Leering centers if he wants to find fraud. Yeah, exactly. Streetwise says, woo, I'm glad nobody uses USD for fraud. Yep. Which bank was it that enlarged the size of their drive-through deposit boxes so the cartels could put bigger briefcases of cash in? Which US bank was that? Okay. Maybe they just shouldn't be able to launch coins like World Liberty Financial. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. This guy looks like your dad's tax accountant. Very much. Very much. Kindergarten politics. Yep. I don't get it. Isn't Midnight supposed to do this stuff? That's a good point. Like, how is this Aleo ZK functionality going to work with Midnight? Isn't Midnight already going to take care of this? That's a good question. Charles put some thought into it. I'm sure he did. I'm sure Charles has a very persuasive argument as to why he chose that one. Just haven't heard it yet. Okay, after reading more on the USDCX, I might enjoy Wrapped better. Definitely need to research more. Yep. Well, we'll have to check it out. That was HSBC laundering 800 billion in cartel money. You're going to have to narrow the bank list down. Sounds like all of them. one of them specifically got in trouble for enlarging the size of the Dropbox in the drive-through in Mexico. Midnight partnering with SpaceCoin to explore a privacy-enhancing peer-to-peer messaging platform built on decentralized satellite infrastructure. Okay. Is this why Charles was talking to SpaceX? Did you mean SpaceCoin or did you mean SpaceX? Has anyone used the Cardano Visa card? Yeah, let us know if you mean SpaceX or SpaceCoin. Okay, let's move on a little bit here. So this is worth looking at. So why might the banks be opposing this so hard? Why might the banks be opposing this so hard? So this post is kind of lengthy, but I think it's worth going through the mental exercise on this, right? So we've talked about some of these things before, but this really puts everything together quite well. So this says the banks are pissing themselves. They've just realized that some autistic crypto startup in a WeWork with 20 million in T-bills and a React front end is about to nuke the entire $17 trillion US deposit base by offering 4.9% yield on a stablecoin, while JP Morgan gives you 0.01 and a debit card that expires in 2 years. That's put pretty starkly, but that's all pretty goddamn accurate. But that's not fair, every bank lobbyist ever. Now, the banking system, this Godzilla made of soy, duct tape, and 11,000 physical branches, is whining to Congress. If you've ever worked inside a large TradFi institution, this is not a fucking exaggeration. Like a Godzilla made of soy and duct tape, not an exaggeration. This isn't fair. If people can earn yield on dollars outside the bank, they might leave the bank. No shit, that's the point. You locked everyone into a zero yield Ponzi for a decade while printing 7 trillion, and now you're shocked people want out. What's next? Are you going to sue water for being wet? This is a regulatory street fight between code and bureaucracy, between global liquidity that settles in 5 seconds and the rotting husk of Bretton Woods wearing a suit made of FDIC pamphlets. And guess what? The White House is hosting peace talks. Yes, Trump's team just invited Circle and Coinbase to sit down with Jamie Dimon and tell him that the future of dollars may not involve Jamie Dimon. Can you imagine the mood in that meeting? Hi, Jamie. Meet Brian from Circle. He tokenizes T-bills with 6 engineers and a Discord server. He's taking 3% of your deposits and none of your regulatory costs. Thoughts? The reality is that every time one of these banks says we're concerned about financial stability, what they mean is please don't let these crypto goblins disrupt our ability to harvest yield off the lower middle class with 18% credit cards and 0% checking counts. I mean, this is dystopian as fuck, but that is what we get. They want protection rackets codified into law. Like you can't offer yield on stablecoins unless you're a licensed bank, aka we missed the boat, so let's blow up the dock. Banks can't compete. Let's model it. A bank, 11,000 branches, 75,000 tellers, legacy core systems from 1982. No exaggeration, I'm telling you. And a CFO who thinks Solana is a fish. Circle, 25 people, 100% T-bill backing, 24/7 redemption, yield streamed on chain like Netflix. We've talked before about the ridiculously low number of employees at Tether, which makes it the most profitable company in the history of the universe in terms of dollars of revenue per employee. All the banks are like shitting their pants because they realize what that means. The guys with marble lobbies, or the protocol that turns dollars into yield bearing bearer assets. Now, let me make this brutally simple. Who wins? The banks are playing defense against stablecoin yield, but what happens next what happens when it clicks that stablecoins are just a transition vector to full monetary exit? What happens when people use stablecoins to bootstrap into Bitcoin treasuries with self-custody? You go from 5% yield off Circle's T-bill stack to 30% CAGR in purchasing power in a bearer asset that can't be diluted and lives outside the IMF death loop. That's endgame stuff. The banks are scared of USDC plus USDT. Wait until every mom in Omaha is yield farming STRC dividends from their Roth IRAs using a Lightning app. We're replacing the entire fiat architecture with a monetary black hole. This is the real deal. This is what's really going on here. And the problem is the TradFi guys, they're not dumb. Their system just sucks, but it's been so profitable. They're all smart. They realize how much it sucks for the users, but they don't care because they're making so much money. And then this all happens, and it is death. It is existential for them. So that's what's going on right now. Okay. What does the X in USDC X mean? It's wrapped. It's wrapped. When you ask mom for USDC, but she says we have USDC X at home. Yep, exactly. Does anyone know any more about Charles's meeting with SpaceX? Nope. I'm all for Cardano native token space coins. Looking at the big ADA midnight entities, we have a major PR and media problem. We look like clowns. Hire a real media company to run the midnight channel. 8,000 subs for fuck's sake. Yeah. So I believe they have a whole new team for midnight. There's a bunch of new people running that stuff. I'm not so sure it's anything they're doing. I think the interest in crypto is just so low right now. Even if you look at the views on this channel, like the views are so wildly different right now than they were during last cycle or even that they were a year ago. It's just the hardest environment ever to get eyes on anything having to do with crypto. It's like very, very brutal. So it might not even be their fault. RC Cola brand USDC. For anybody who doesn't know what RC Cola is, that's actually a pretty good analog. He must mean space coins, the OG Cardinal community token. Whatever you do, you did it. Yep, I remember those. If anybody who went to a certain after party at the Wyoming summit got some actually. I worked at the Canada Revenue Agency. If you want to lose trust in institutions, I have some stories for you. There you go. There you go. Those would be even more extreme, I'm sure. It eclipses a great post. I agree. That's a great post. The space coins thing would be the biggest sleeper ever. It was the very first Cardano meme coin. Yep. Whatever happened to Atala Prism? So Atala Prism morphed into the project. Somebody in the comments will know exactly who's running the project and the name. We've talked about it on this channel, but there was another identity solution being run by a big consortium, and they've got kind of their own product. So it kind of morphed into that. You also get large banks manipulating the price, trying to shake us all out. Yep, definitely. Maybe the X in USDC X is SpaceX integration. That'd be cool. Omar says thumbs up. Why it was given to Hyperledger. Okay, there we go. It was given to Hyperledger, called Identus now, not dead by any means, and going to come into play with Midnight soon. Yep. There we go. Good memory. Good memory, Brown Bruto. OG CNT space coins. Yep. I look at the current environment as being solid buy time, but then I'm a very small investor. Yep. No, I agree. I would be, if I was still in the fiat mines, I would definitely still be DCAing like normal. Okay, so let's move down a little bit here. So if you want to know, so that's kind of the rundown of what's really going down. That's the real thing. What we just saw, it's the yield. The yield thing is the only thing that's really holding the Clarity Act back. The issue is becoming more and more politicized, but the real reason it's becoming politicized is because the banks are throwing a huge amount of money around Capitol Hill right now, right? They've got it. This is really existential for them. The bankers aren't stupid. They recruit the best and the brightest. They are not lacking in IQs on Wall Street. They know everything in here. They know this is the real deal. They know this is it. So they're doing everything they can not to let this happen. I would argue it's inevitable. Is it simultaneously going to be a huge grind for us to get there? Yes, because these guys are going to fight it tooth and nail and try to co-opt as much of crypto as possible. So what actually has to happen mechanically for us to get there? So Senate Ag Committee just advanced the bill. Most people have no idea how far this bill still has to travel. Here we go. The committee files its official report and the bill lands on the Senate legislative calendar. Then Majority Leader Toon decides when to bring it to the floor. But we've still got the whole finance side of this. So the whole finance side of this has to happen. So if there's unanimous consent agreement, debate moves fast with set limits on amendment and timing. Like we said, no Democrats voted for this in committee. So it's probably not going to achieve unanimous consent. So if that doesn't happen, we're looking at a motion to proceed, which can get filibustered, right? You know, there's a lot of talk right now about possibly nuking the filibuster because the other side that doesn't control the House and the Senate right now might do exactly the same thing once they control it. So it's that whole debate. If it reaches debate, senators will fight over the fine print, consumer protections, the definition of a digital commodity, fraud provisions, etc. All fair game for amendments. Then comes the cloture vote. If opponents try to stall, 60 votes are needed to end the debate and move things forward. Final Senate passage only requires a simple majority. Sounding needlessly complex so far, it gets worse. The House already passed its own version, House Resolution 3633 back in July. That bill is broader, covering both CFTC and SEC jurisdiction. The Senate version is narrower, focused on CFTC and digital commodities. So I would argue the banking committee is also gonna want to get in there and do their thing. Soon as the Senate passes clarity, the House has options: pass the Senate bill as is, amend it, substitute their own text, or negotiate. The most likely scenario, conference. They have a conference between the House and the Senate. Senior members from both chambers hash out a compromise into one final text. No more amendments allowed. Both chambers vote up or down. Then it goes to the president's desk. He will definitely sign it. If he vetoes it, that won't happen. Congress could come back and override his veto with 2/3 in both chambers. So there's a lot still to be done. Is it a good sign that it came out of the Ag Committee with no Democratic votes? Not at all. Is it a good sign that the Senate Banking Committee wasn't able to get to markup? Not at all. We've still got a ways to go before we could actually get the Clarity Act out of the Senate, and then it's got to go back to the House, conference, to the White House. So some things still have to happen. I know some people were acting like the Senate passed the Clarity Act because it came out of conference. That's not at all what happened. S. Walker is here. Puppers is in the house. Good. I was wondering how Puppers was doing. The reason I asked about the Cardano card is that it dawned on me that I have held ADA for years and never used it for anything. So real world use, the card. Yeah, I mean, the problem is we don't have a de minimis exemption. So if you spend any of your ADA, depending on what jurisdiction you're in a lot of jurisdictions like the US, you're going to have to pay taxes on any appreciation at a minimum. Even if you bought high and you're spending it low, you'd still have to account, you still have to do the accounting on this asset that's being spent because there's no de minimis exemption. So that's the problem with spending on those cards right now, at least in jurisdictions like the US. So yeah, we built the most incredible highway, but nobody wants to drive on it. Feels like everything is going to be a sell the news event until 2029. I sure hope not, but it's possible. It's possible. So this also happened today. So obviously the Ag Committee markup was the thing everybody was focused on. Everybody kind of knew what was going to happen because Booker and the rest of the Democrats on the committee did not sign off on it. So everybody knew they weren't gonna vote for it. It was gonna, if it came out of committee, it would come out of committee along party lines. But we did have something that went exactly like you'd hope. And that was this meeting today between the SEC and the CFTC, Selig and Atkins. They got together and talked about Project Crypto. How refreshing is this? It looks like we're on the set of Between Two Ferns or whatever that show was called. But this was great. We had the head of the SEC, Atkins, the head of the CFTC, Selig, and they both talked about all the things they're going to do for us in crypto. how they want to make the US the crypto hub of the world. It was all very, very positive. This is probably the most pro crypto SEC plus CFTC we will ever see. It's very unlikely in the future we ever get an SEC and a CFTC that are so pro crypto. This is the golden time. All the things we want to get, we got to get them now, because in the future, very unlikely we'll ever have this again. So all the things they said in this this little fireside chat, exactly what you'd expect. It was just like, how do we make crypto great in the US? So this is a great meeting. We'll probably, like I said, we should enjoy this while we can, because we'll probably never get this in the future. S. Walker says, Puppers was on a cruise in the Mexican Riviera. Ooh, good for Puppers. Tequila, Smoky Bones, and Blue Water. But he's back now. Ooh, very nice. Very nice. Congratulations to Puppers. That is very nice. So what else do we have here? So like I said, most pro crypto SEC ever. SEC Chair Paul Atkins says now is the right time to open up the $12.5 trillion 401k retirement market of crypto. Like, man, some people are able to get crypto into their retirement accounts now. But wouldn't it be great if everybody's mom could just hit the old ADA button inside her Fidelity 401k? Wouldn't that be great? And we are definitely not there yet. Good evening, Per Gork Canton. Use Alexa was the first blockchain. It was locked. Okay. Per Gork Canton uses it exclusively. It was created by Circle. It is wrapped by a Circle official product via Circle's X Reserve. Alexa was the first blockchain it was launched on. Oh, okay. Okay. That's okay. So this is some more information on USDCX. Okay, cool. That sounds good. It's sounding positive. It sounds, people are putting a positive spin on USDCX. So that's a good sign. So the SEC also just published a taxonomy on tokenized securities. And like you'd expect, it's all pretty positive for us. The taxonomy provides details on various models that can be used to tokenize securities. It doesn't consider the types of tokens that are not securities. It just talks about categories of tokenized securities. So it's largely dividing the world up into issuer-sponsored tokenized securities and third-party sponsored tokenized securities. The issuer-sponsored securities are only different from traditional securities in that the master security holder list is tracked on-chain or used indirectly to effect transfers on a traditional stockholder ledger. Any issuer could allow security holders to convert their securities between tokenized format and traditional format. So basically, this is like the issuer of the security just putting these securities on the blockchain, right? The other two models are third-party sponsored tokenized securities. These are custodial tokenized securities, which creates a security entitlement that is formatted as a crypto asset, and synthetic tokenized securities, which we've talked a lot about on this channel, either through a linked security or a security-based swap. So there's a little bit of information here, but basically this is just the SEC trying to get everybody to use the same nomenclature to describe these different categories of tokenized securities. So this isn't the SEC saying, here's how you do it. It's not, hey, we're giving everybody permission to do it. It's not, hey, you can do this and not comply with securities laws. They're just laying out a taxonomy they want everybody to use when they're talking about tokenized securities. So people got kind of excited about that. And it's good. It's good. We should all be on the same page, so we're all talking about the same thing. But it's not like, hey, the SEC is giving you permission to do things with securities that you couldn't do before. So Paul Graywall, CLO at Coinbase, as you guess, very excited about this, because who is going to be a big recipient of the benefit of tokenized securities? Probably platforms like Coinbase. He says it's happening. What an excellent preview by SEC of how tokenized equities can be issued for on-chain trading. You're going to see these products in market with the support of a regulator that understands the importance of these innovations to U.S. competitiveness. And I think all of us in crypto, we understand securities. I mean, blockchains are like perfect. right? They're perfect for, for being the ledger that securities, the ownership of securities are tracked on. It's like blockchains are perfect for it. You see IOG updated their website. Looks clean. I haven't seen it. Did we lose the koi fish? Did we lose the one like splash page with the koi fish you could interact with? I'll be sad to see them go, but they've sort of changed their website every couple of years all along. So it's about time. It's about time probably. So this was also a lot of big news over the last 24 hours. We saw different numbers attached to different, different durations, different time periods. This post is gold and silver wiped out 5.9 trillion worth of market cap within 30 minutes. Do you understand how crazy that is? To put that in perspective, we just saw wealth equivalent to the combined GDP of UK and France evaporate in less time than it takes to order a pizza. This doesn't even feel real. People are going on and on, posting the charts. They can't believe it. In crypto, of course, even though this is like a crazy magnitude, bigger than the entire crypto market, and we'll see later other posters, attached a $3 trillion dip to this movement in the charts. But this is actually the kind of volatility we're used to in crypto. So this is definitely the kind of volatility we're used to. So while gold bugs may not have been expecting this in crypto, when we see these crazy parabolic highs, the next thing we're kind of expecting, the next foot to fall in our minds, is usually this. So this probably didn't surprise a lot of people in crypto. Here's another one, massive crash, 8.2%, 3 trillion. Again, still more than the entire crypto market. All the mainstream non-crypto people seem to be shocked by this, and all the crypto people are just kind of like, that's what happens. What goes up comes down. So that's what's been going on with the gold and silver stuff. So I was kind of happy to see all the gold bugs, see their day, get their day in the sun. But also when things go up that fast, we know what happens next in crypto. The head of the media team at IOG is some dude in a baggy suit who looks like he just woke up, and then they roll out a guy who looks like he's cosplaying George Custer. we look like I have not seen these guys, so I can't comment. I haven't seen any of the people you're talking about. George Custer is a very funny reference, though. And I mean, let's face it, crypto is full of edgelords. So crypto is definitely the currency of edgelords. The only guy who looked prepared or comfortable was the guy from Intersect. Okay, that's Jack. Is that Jack you're talking about? Daniil says USDCX is privacy focused. That sounds good. Has anyone checked on Peter Schiff? I mean, Peter Schiff, some of those guys have been waiting so long. God, I hate to check on how those guys are doing, because last time I looked at anything like that was a couple days ago, and somebody mentioned that the rich dad poor dad guy might have traded some huge amount of his gold for Bitcoin like 12 months ago or something. I didn't even want to check to see if that was real, because I felt too bad. I honestly felt too bad for the guy if it was true, so I didn't want to know if it was true or not. But I mean, Peter Schiff is like the ultimate heel to the Bitcoin community. I mean, he played the part of the heel so perfectly that they actually started he started being a featured speaker at Bitcoin conferences, because he had talked so much shit about Bitcoin over the years. So I mean, I'm happy for those guys. If they waited, those guys waited like decades. They waited decades. I remember, God, it was at least, yeah, God, it was probably like 50, way over a decade ago. I was in a place. I'll just say I was in a place where a lot of gold is bought. In a building where a lot of gold is bought, and I remember talking to the to the guy who owned the place, and gold had just crossed some threshold that seems minuscule now. It seems like crazy low now, given where things are at. And he was like amazed. He's like, I can't believe gold is this high. It's so crazy. So I'm happy for all those guys, like those guys dealing in gold and the people investing in gold. I'm very happy for all of them. I hope they all made a ton of money. because those dudes waited a long time. Those dudes were patient. If they actually made it this far, they were patient. So, but if he didn't sell, he might be unwell. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still up. I think they're still like massively, massively up. So, I hope they don't round trip it. I hope they don't round trip it. I hope they sell at the right time and make some money. That's what I hope for those guys. I hope those guys do great because they definitely were patient. In crypto, we're pretty patient, but those guys real patient. So, okay, let's cover some IR stuff and then we'll see if we still have some time left over to delve deeper into USDCX. So I don't think we're not going to be able to do like a full research on USDCX. That'll happen later, but we'll see if we've got some time. If anybody's got anything else interesting on USDCX, we can definitely talk about it if we can get through the next few tabs. So on the IR front, we're getting closer and closer to when things are going to start popping off. So a lot of US Air Force movement, we'll just say eastward, right? Because every time they move something, they're sort of like, oh, we're moving, these assets, which coincidentally would be very helpful in a strike on Iran. We're moving them to Europe, and then we find out it's not. Europe is a stop and they're moving a little bit closer. So we're seeing all kinds of aircraft moving east. After a day layover, gold flight of KC-46A tankers now dragging 6 EA-18G Growlers. Those are for electronic warfare to Spain, where they will likely continue on to Qatar. A Congo line of C-17s have today flown out of several bases in the U.S. heading for Europe and the Middle East. This includes 9 C-17 flights from Fort Hood, which are likely the final air defense assets being moved to the area area near Iran. Communication nodes moving. 130J Combat King 2s. You know what those are used for. If you know what those are used for, you're thinking about this kind of post right here. This aircraft is a vital SOCOM asset. So you know what that, you probably already know what's going on there if you know what those aircraft are used for. HC-130J Combat King 2s now also moving toward the Middle East. I suspect you'll either have a stopover, eventually directly deployed to Jordan. So all kinds, people are tracking all kinds of movements into the Middle East. So crazy amount of assets moving into the Middle East. And that last particular item is making people think about, let's see if I have the post I was looking for in here. Might be a little bit later. Let's see. This one. So that last one, the 130J Commando 2s are going to make people think of this, right? This is almost a little bit too obvious to me, though, because of course, after what just happened in Venezuela with Maduro, the clerical regime is going to be thinking of that. And we also know in the last strikes against the nuclear facilities in Iran, the U.S. had B-2s flying in one direction just as a form of misdirection. So I kind of wonder if all of this is going on also just as a form of misdirection. It seems like this would be the first thing on the minds of the clerical regime. But going backwards here a little bit, so people are talking. There's a lot of incorrect statements being made about carrier strike groups. So right now, this is the status of all the carrier strike groups, right? Deployed. You've got the USS Abraham Lincoln. We've been talking about that one. It's now in the just off the coast of Oman. You've got the Gerald Ford in the Caribbean. You've got the USS George Washington in Japan. USS George H.W. Bush in Norfolk. USS Theodore Roosevelt, the strike carrier group, not the destroyer, in San Diego. The Carl Vinson, San Diego. Harry S. Truman, Norfolk. Maintenance, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, John C. Stennis. Decommissioning, USS Nimitz and still in trials, John F. Kennedy. So it's kind of a weird situation. There aren't really any carriers that can be deployed right now to as a second carrier strike group in addition to the USS Abraham Lincoln. So this is a different situation than when we struck the nuclear facilities. And you can see that, let's see where we got you can see that right here. So here's another map showing what is there both on the IRGC side and the US side. So here are the US destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the Red Sea. Here are some cutters and littoral ships. So these are for closer to shoreline activities. Um, in the Persian Gulf. I guess some of these destroyers are also in the Persian Gulf, this map is saying. Then you got the USS Abraham Lincoln strike carrier group. And we all know the strike carrier groups will usually have an unnamed, unidentified nuclear submarine along with them. We already knew one was there, so it's probably 2 nuclear submarines in the area as well. The thing that's weird about this, though, is regime change would be a bigger engagement than just hitting the nuclear facilities last time. And when we hit the nuclear facilities, we had 2 carrier strike groups. We had 14 destroyers. We had all of these ships. Right now, we have 1 carrier group, USS Abraham Lincoln, only 8 destroyers, and just basically less of everything except for cutters. We've got the same number basically, but it's not quite the same buildup of naval power as we had last time. Last time we had 2 super carriers. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird situation. You'd think if they were going to attempt regime change, they would have at least as much as they did back in June. And it's just not the case. Huge buildup of air power, though. So this is more, everybody's sort of clued in to this. Like all of the open source intelligence guys are reporting on the MC-130J Commando 2 and speculating, about this whole thing. Everybody's speculating on this. That tells me, that tells me, if every open source intelligence guy in the world is speculating on that, then the DoD probably very much intended for that to be the case. So I don't think this is anything hidden that these guys are, cluing the world into. I think the DoD very much intended for all these open source guys to be making this speculation for the impact of that speculation on Tehran. So let's see. Omar says distractions. Yeah, it's gonna be if they try to take out the clerical regime in the IRGC, it's gonna be a real big distraction. Yes, all this is diversionary to conceal the invasion of Greenland. Yeah, definitely not. Reminds me of Command and Conquer. It does. Yeah, I mean, looking at it on maps like this, I mean, Command and Conquer was intended to replicate these kinds of views of assets on a battlefield, which the public wasn't really seeing like this until the advent of these kind of accounts on social media, but. The nuclear facilities that did not eliminate Iran's nuclear capabilities, yeah, apparently a little bit of a contradiction there, right? We're the administration will often report one thing to us and then as eliminated, and then several months later they have to re-eliminate it. That's definitely been the case. So huge, yeah. The amount of assets going toward the Middle East is really interesting. It's weird because you would think that you could imagine that they would be aiming for sort of this weekend. These things tend to happen on weekends to keep them out of the news cycle as much as possible, and for other reasons, because certain personnel will be at home on the weekends versus being at their posts. All those kind of things. But civilians, might be at home and safer. So all those kind of things. But it's weird that we've only got one carrier in the region. We've got like less naval power in the region than we did when we were just hitting the nuclear facilities. So that's kind of a weird situation. So here was an interesting map. So I haven't fact checked this at all, but it kind of makes sense to me. looking at the different ranges they're setting up. So they're showing you the range of the famous Shahed drones that the Iranian regime has, the same ones that they sort of, they sort of gave that technology to Russia, so Russia could produce the same drones to use in Ukraine's. The world's kind of seen those drones in action, and we certainly saw them in action during the 12-day war. And there's some really good videos of U.S. fighter pilots breaking down exactly. Max Afterburner has some good videos about this. Exactly how the U.S. Air assets will combat those drones. But we've also got these medium range ballistic missiles and these long range cruise missiles, which obviously have a greater range than the drones, right? So you can see they can touch, just with their medium range ballistic missiles, they can touch pretty much everything they would want to in the entire Middle East region, right? There's nothing in the region they can't hit with those mid-range ballistic missiles. And then we get to the long-range cruise missiles. This chart has got them being able to hit even northern Italy, and it looks like into Switzerland. If they not, they would want to hit Switzerland for any reason. They're, you know, famously neutral, but they could pretty much hit all of Italy, most of all of Eastern Europe, but definitely NATO territory. So obviously, if something like that were to happen, it would be every U.S. asset in the world targeting Tehran. So I don't. This is no reason to get too alarmist over this, but if this chart is accurate, this is a pretty wide range. But then we think back to the 12-day war and how effective the air defense batteries were and the air assets were against all of everything that Tehran threw at Israel. So, and how ineffective their attack was. So, some contradictory information. James Syracuse is here. And on his part, Trump pretty much had this to say. So it's hard to tell with him when he's being cryptic and when not, because certainly, in the lead up to the Venezuela raid where they took down Maduro, it was kind of all the same sort of stuff. So here we have, I think this was the screening of the Melania movie. So at the screening of the Melania movie, some reporter said, "Have you had any more communications with Iranians regarding the protesters?" Trump said, "I have had and am planning on it. Yeah, we have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now. And it would be great if we didn't have to use them. Can you say what the message was that you shared with the Iranians?" Well, I told them two things. Number one, no nuclear. Number two, stop killing protesters. They're killing them by the thousands, I stopped 837 hangings 2 weeks ago, but they're going to have to do something. Nobody's seen anything like this. So, I mean, one thing, he's pretty good at giving non-answers, and he was pretty good at this in the lead up to Venezuela. And what we saw in Venezuela was they just kept building up assets in the Southern Caribbean. And then the strike kind of happened. It was sort of like build up assets. And, at first the target gets very anxious, and then the target kind of gets comfortable. And then all of a sudden the strike happens, right? We may be able to expect the same thing with Iran, but who knows? It's weird. We have fewer naval assets there than we did during those strikes last summer. So who knows what's going to happen on that front? But yeah, Max, if you want to get a fighter pilot's perspective on all this, that channel, Max Afterburner, very, very good channel on that. Also, he talks about some UAP experiences he had as a fighter pilot. So yeah, so this is so I think that is all the news from today. On the USDCX thing, I think we're gonna have to do a little bit more digging to sort of understand if we got USDCX because the ZK functionality makes it somehow superior for Midnight plus Cardano over regular USDC, or if it's just being sold that way and it was actually easier to get that than regular USDC, right? You can imagine to get regular USDC on Cardano, is probably a little bit bigger deal than this wrapped USDC. To get USDC on a UTXO chain, in our case, an EUTXO chain, probably a lot more build out going on there than to get this wrapped USDCX that's already been. This is obviously already been built out on this Aleo chain. So we'll probably do some more research on that at a later date. Probably, I'm sure people are going to be talking about that like crazy this weekend and into next week. But it's some big news that the Pentad, is one of the, probably the most high profile thing that the Pentad promised for us. The Pentad's supposed to deliver certain things, bridges, but most importantly, tier 1 stablecoin. So I guess probably a lot of people probably are pretty happy that it was USDC and not Tether, because there was definitely some concern that we were going to end up with something and we would be told it was a tier 1 stablecoin and it might be a stablecoin that none of us actually regard as tier 1. So that definitely didn't happen. USDC is definitely a tier 1 stablecoin, but we got this USDCX. Yeah, I mean, the fact it was so quick makes me think it was just a matter of writing a check, right? It sounds like it was just a matter of writing a check. I kind of think this is the kind of thing we're not really going to understand how useful it is until it's actually on the chain running. But also, like somebody pointed out in the comments, through one chain, we already had access to a wrapped USDC. So I knew something about that. I would have to double check. I can't. It's been too long for me to remember exactly how that worked. But I do remember some version of a wrapped stablecoin being available through OneChain somehow. So, it's like sort of like shades of different utilities. You know what I mean? If I'll be curious. What I'm trying to say is I'll be curious how this mechanically works with this Aleo USDCX. If it's the same as just having, USDC natively running around Cardano and Midnight, if it's really that useful. Oh, here was the comment. So Rojo Ohm said, already have wrapped USDC with OneChain. So yeah, so the question is, what's the delta in utility between these two things? Is what we're getting, this USDCX, okay, it's got some ZK functionality. That sounds good. We're in favor of that, right? But what's the delta in utility over this version of wrapped USDC that was already available? So that's one question we've got to sort out. But it is a good point that it was delivered to us pretty quickly. That was a quick delivery. That's true. So here's another question. Why are stablecoins good for us? Because it brings more cash onto the network somehow. So I think this is why it's really important to ask, what's the difference in utility? Because if wrapped USDC, and again, I haven't verified this, but if wrapped USDC was already available via one chain, but mechanically it was inconvenient enough to do it, obviously that wasn't like some make or break thing that drastically changed, the amount of liquidity on the Cardano chain. So what's the delta between what we had on one chain and this USDCX? Is this also going to be something that's kind of like inconvenient to do in some way because it's a wrapped asset? Like if somebody's using USDC on Coinbase or, in the EVM world, like what did they have to do to turn it into USDCX to use over in Cardano Midnight world? Because if it's too many steps, they're probably just not going to do it, right? Like these are questions. These are not statements. These are questions. We've got to figure out like how hard is it actually for that liquidity to make its way over into Cardano and Midnight World. Because if it's too hard, it probably won't have a huge impact on liquidity. If it's really easy, then maybe it will. So I think these are interesting questions that are going to be kind of hashed out over the next week. And of course, there's going to be drama over it. The people who hate Charles, no matter what it actually is, the people who hate Charles are going to say that USDCX sucks, and the people who love Charles are going to say the opposite. So let's see, Linda and her, who's that? Who's Linda? Linda and her buddy were talking about your stance on the AI generated constitution tonight. I haven't heard your stance on it, to be honest. Any updates on that? So I did a whole bunch of videos and a whole bunch of big, I did a whole bunch of videos and a whole bunch of big threads on X. So just go back and watch the videos from, I even did one this week, kind of wrapped everything up. So just go back and look at some of the old videos, but we talked about it quite a bit in a great amount of detail. So you can go back and watch those videos or go back and read some of those threads. I did one big thread called "The Constitution is Worse." And that's kind of like the too long didn't read on it. But there's some very specific reasons why I think that. Probably the really good ones to read are probably, if you want to read on X, the thread called, it's an article actually. The article called "The Constitution is Worse," which you can find on my profile. And there's also Adam Rush made a really good comment. He brought up a specific Supreme Court case. It's actually one of the most important Supreme Court cases ever. And I also wrote a long post discussing our Constitution in the context of that Supreme Court case, which is Marbury versus Madison. So if you read those two things, you'll understand pretty well what I'm getting at there. But I also covered it on a bunch of live streams over the last 2 weeks. We talked about it quite a bit. You'll be able to find those. Brown Beardo says mad USDC 2, probably others I'm not thinking of. So this is a good point. I knew there were several instances of us having various types of wrapped stable coins of different types. And none of them really seem to have any giant impact on liquidity. I'm sure there's measurable liquidity that came across those bridges or whatever it was. But none of it made any kind of huge night and day difference in Cardano. So the question is, what's different about this one, and what kind of actual impact is it going to have on liquidity? Because if it's just another stable coin, it could either have a big impact on liquidity or not, and that's a question we've got to kind of tease out. So, and I'm sure it's Cardano, so people are going to discuss it ad nauseum, probably 4 months. So Rojo Ohm says, if USDCX is liquid on centralized exchanges like USDC, it could be good for us. Yeah, I mean, if it's the kind of thing that people can buy on Coinbase, if they can use a Coinbase or a Kraken fiat on-ramp, and then they can send that directly to their Cardano wallet, that is a very different situation than if they can't, right? Because right now you can sort of buy ADA on Coinbase. You can send ADA to your Cardano wallet, but that's not the same thing, right? And probably even more importantly, vice versa, because really what people want to do is use the stable coin in Cardano DeFi and then be able to hold that in their Cardano wallet and be able to send that back over to the centralized exchange at any time. So, yeah. So, okay. Streetwise says Intersect Homie was talking about it in Osaka and how they had a constitutional convention to create it and how democratic it was. I guess that's why we removed checks and balances. Yeah, this is another little too long didn't read for you and Bill. So the big problem, to me, the most hilarious TLDR of this is that in the old Constitution, the words checks and balances existed. In the new Constitution, the words checks and balances do not exist. And there's no disagreement that AI played a role in this amendment. So there you go. That's probably the best way I can sum it up. And there's a lot of detail around that, but that little too long didn't read is a good encapsulation of it. AI enthusiasts, let's go. So, who knows? Maybe we don't really know, but maybe maybe the tier 1 stablecoin is also going to be an example of us riding the steamroller, right? It's like we know what the destination is. Eventually, a tier 1 stablecoin, just like a USDC or a Tether, is going to be running wild, unprotected on Cardano at midnight. Is this it already? I hope so, but if not, I actually, and Bill, I actually pulled out 2 different LLMs and asked the LLM to, I already knew from looking at it, but I asked the LLM to tell 2 different LLMs, Grok and ChatGPT, to tell us how much of the editing was done by AI, and I did a whole video about that. And the 2 LLMs did not agree with that statement. I'll just put it that way. And I've also looked at a lot of documents similar to this one that were written by AI. I've looked at a lot written by AI and a lot by humans, and I could immediately tell that AI was involved. And that was part of the problem, because I asked the proposer clear back in June if AI was being used, and the answer was Google Translate and a lot of humans. And then after it was passed, it was revealed that also 3 different LLMs were used. So anyways, there's a lot of detail there. We don't need to rehash it right now. You can go back and watch those videos. But both my eyes and 2 different LLMs disagree that it was just a correct grammar. I'll put it that way. So anyways, I think we have covered all of the news probably for this week. I think we've covered all the news for this week. This is actually great news. It's great to hear that the Pentat is making some progress. Um, yeah, I think anybody who uses AI extensively, I definitely do. Not the only thing I use AI for these videos is the thumbnails. Obviously this is a live stream, so there's no AI involved in what you're hearing or what I show you, other than the thumbnail. But I use AI very extensively for other things in my life, and yeah, pretty much anybody who does that understands how easily AI could be used for something like that. And it's pretty apparent when you look at the track change draft. It's like very apparent how much AI was used, because the way AI makes changes and leaves islands of text inside huge blocks of other deleted text, when humans it would be very rare for a human to edit a document like that, but it's very, very common for AI edits to look like that. So that told me everything I need to know, and then the LLMs kind of confirmed what I already knew. So anyways, I think we've covered all the news this week. Oh, Streetwise, thank you. Streetwise, with the super chat for $4.99. Thank you. I appreciate that. There haven't been too many super chats in the history of this channel. I think this is we're probably still under half a dozen. I think we've probably had less than half a dozen, so I appreciate it very much. Streetwise says, thanks for bringing attention to this amendment. Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody just voted yes on it, and there wasn't a lot of scrutiny. But even you know, another thing to check out would be Jane. Jane, uh, who is an attorney inside the ecosystem, she made a post about, the Constitution being amended by non-attorneys, and what she thought of that process. So you can go read her post too. But yeah, I mean, there should have been a lot more scrutiny on that amendment. I think it's easy to come to that conclusion. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. But I think this is all the news for this week. I think there's more coming for us on the crypto front. I think things are going to kind of heat up next week when the White House gets Coinbase and the bankers together. I think that's going to be the big showdown in the OK Corral. I think it's all going to go down next week. Whether they come out of that with something that works for both sides or not, I don't know. But certainly all the lobbying dollars that are sort of being spent around Capitol Hill, probably if both of those sides are satisfied, then suddenly the senators on both sides of those issues will get a lot more amenable to passing the bill, magically, as soon as, the Jamie Dimons of the world and the Brian Armstrongs of the world are satisfied, the senators will suddenly feel a lot more comfortable about it. You can draw your own conclusions. But I think some of that'll go down next week. At some point here, something's going to happen in the Middle East, and it might be historic, which is why we've been following this so closely. So I think we've got a lot coming. Maybe this weekend, but definitely next week we're gonna have some things to talk about. But I hope everybody had a great week. This is great to hear this new news in Cardano out of the Pentad. So pretty good day for Cardano. Sounds like things are moving forward like the thumbnail implies. Maybe we're moving forward at a steamroller rate, but the good thing, steamrollers tend to quash everything in front of them. So I hope everybody had a great week. Hope you're looking forward to a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.